You are furniture. You are invisible. If you say a single word tonight, you're fired." That was the last thing Grant Sterling, a high-flying VP at Viridian Tech, whispered to his waitress, Khloe, before the most important meeting of his life. He thought he was closing a $50 million merger with the toughest CEO in Tokyo. He thought he was in control, but within an hour, the deal was dead. The room was silent, and Grant was hyperventilating. That is until the invisible waitress did the one thing he told her not to do. She opened her mouth, and what she said didn't just change the meeting, it destroyed Grant's career and created a legend. This is the story of how a spilled glass of Cabernet and a waitress with a secret saved a $50 million empire. The Obsidian Room in Midtown Manhattan wasn't just a restaurant. It was a theater of war where the ammunition was Wagyu beef and the treaties were signed in vintage Bordeaux. The lighting was always dim, the leather booths deep enough to hide secrets, and the silence so heavy you could hear the scratch of a fountain pen on a check. Khloe stood at Station 4, smoothing the invisible wrinkles on her apron. She was 23, with tired eyes and hands that were chapped from sanitizer, but her posture was impeccable. To the patrons of the Obsidian Room, she wasn't a person. She was a delivery mechanism for calories and alcohol, and that was fine by her. It paid the tuition for her PhD program at Columbia, a life she kept strictly separate from the steakhouse. Tonight, Station 4 was reserved for Grant Sterling. Everyone in the New York tech scene knew the name, though usually for the wrong reasons. Grant was the regional director for Viridian Tech, a man who wore suits that cost more than Khloe's car and possessed an ego that could barely fit through the revolving doors. He was handsome in a predatory way, sharp jaw, gelled hair, and teeth that had been whitened to a blinding, unnatural porcelain. He arrived at 6:30 p.m., 30 minutes early. He was vibrating with nervous energy, snapping at the busboys and rearranging the silverware himself. "You!" Grant barked, not looking up from the table as he aligned the forks. Khloe stepped forward. "Good evening, sir. My name is Khloe. I'll be taking care of—" "I didn't ask for a biography," Grant cut her off, finally looking up. His eyes were cold, assessing her value and finding it at 0. "This table is hosting Kaito Yamamoto. Do you know who that is?" "The CEO of Yamamoto Heavy Industries," Khloe said automatically. She knew who he was. She read the Financial Times on her subway commute. Grant blinked, surprised for a microsecond, before his sneer returned. "Good. You can read. Then you know that tonight determines whether my company stock triples or crashes. I don't need distractions. I don't need today's specials. I don't need, 'Hi, my name is Khloe.'" He stood up, towering over her, invading her personal space to assert dominance. He smelled of expensive musk and anxiety. "Here are the rules," Grant hissed, pointing a manicured finger at her face. "You fill the water when it's half empty. You pour the wine when the glass is low. You bring the food immediately. But you do not speak. You do not offer opinions. You do not make small talk. To Mr. Yamamoto, you are furniture. If I hear a single peep out of you that isn't, 'Yes, sir,' I will have you fired before the dessert course. Do we understand each other?" Khloe felt the familiar burn of humiliation in her chest, but she swallowed it down. She needed this shift. Rent was due in 4 days. "Understood, sir," she said quietly. "Louder," Grant demanded. "Understood, Mr. Sterling. Good. Now get out of my sight until they arrive." Khloe retreated to the service station, her heart hammering a slow, angry rhythm against her ribs. She watched Grant from the shadows. He was rehearsing his pitch, mouthing words, checking his reflection in a spoon. He looked like a man preparing for a coronation. What Grant didn't know, what he hadn't bothered to ask, was that Khloe wasn't just a waitress. She was a doctoral candidate in linguistic anthropology, specializing in high-context communication and proxemics. She had spent the last 3 years studying how silence speaks louder than words in East Asian hierarchies. She watched Grant pacing. He was aggressive, loud, and expansive. He's going to blow it, Khloe thought. He's going to try to dominate a man who values harmony, and he's going to crash this deal into a wall. But she had her orders. She was furniture, and furniture doesn't give warnings. At 7:00 p.m. exactly, the heavy oak doors opened. The maitre d' bowed lower than usual as 3 men entered. In the center was Kaito Yamamoto. He was 70 years old, a man of small stature but immense gravity. He wore a charcoal suit that was understated but flawlessly tailored. He didn't walk, he glided. Flanking him were 2 younger associates, rigid and carrying thick leather briefcases. They were his buffers, his memory, and his shield. Grant Sterling shot up from the booth like a jack-in-the-box, grinning that blinding, porcelain smile. "Mr. Yamamoto, Kaito, welcome, welcome," Grant boomed, his voice echoing uncomfortably in the hushed restaurant. He rushed forward, arm extended for a handshake. Khloe, watching from the periphery with a pitcher of ice water, winced. "Mistake 1, she catalogued mentally. You don't rush a man like Yamamoto. You wait for him to acknowledge you. You don't use his first name." Yamamoto paused. He looked at Grant's extended hand for a long second, his face an unreadable mask of stone. Slowly, deliberately, he took the hand, gave a single weak shake, and withdrew. "Mr. Sterling," Yamamoto said. His voice was like dry leaves scraping over concrete. Quiet, raspy, dangerous. "Please, sit, sit. Best table in the house." Grant gestured wildly. The group sat. The tension was immediate. Grant was a hurricane of noise, filling every silence with chatter about the weather, the stock market, the flight over. He was terrified of silence. He treated silence like an enemy. Yamamoto, conversely, seemed to live in the silence. He sat perfectly still, his hands resting on his knees under the table, observing Grant with eyes that looked tired and disappointed. Khloe approached the table to pour water. She moved like a ghost, sliding the crystal glasses onto the linen with 0 sound. "And this is the menu," Grant said, snatching the menus from Khloe's hands before she could present them, effectively shoving her aside. "I've already taken the liberty of ordering appetizers for the table. The seafood tower here is legendary. You have to try it." Yamamoto's associate, a sharp-eyed man named Kenji, spoke up softly. "Mr. Yamamoto prefers a light start. Perhaps just nonsense," Grant laughed, waving his hand dismissively. "You're in New York. You have to eat like New Yorkers. Big, bold, right?" He looked at Yamamoto for validation. Yamamoto did not smile. He merely blinked. Khloe saw it then, a microscopic tightening of Yamamoto's jaw, a slight flare of the nostrils. In her studies, this was a Class A distress signal. The man was being insulted. His autonomy was being stripped away by a loud American who thought hospitality meant force-feeding. Grant turned to Khloe, his eyes snapping with impatience. "Well, where is the wine list? I told you to have the sommelier ready." "I have the list here, sir," Khloe whispered, presenting the leather-bound book. "I'll handle this," Grant announced to the table. "Mr. Yamamoto, I know you appreciate the finer things. I'm ordering us the 1998 Screaming Eagle. It's big, it's aggressive, it's the best Cabernet in the country. $4,000 a bottle." Khloe froze. No, she thought. Yamamoto is from the Kyoto prefecture. He's a traditionalist. He values subtlety, balance, history. A Screaming Eagle is a fruit bomb. It's too high in alcohol. It will overpower his palate. It's a vanity order. She looked at Grant. She wanted to signal him. She wanted to slightly nudge the wine list toward the French Burgundies, elegant, understated, respectful. But Grant's eyes met hers, and the message was clear. Furniture. Silence. Excellent choice, she lied softly. Bring 2 bottles, Grant ordered, and decant them immediately. As Khloe walked away, she felt a pit in her stomach. The deal wasn't dead yet, but it was on life support. Grant was trying to buy Yamamoto's respect with price tags, unaware that he was selling his own ignorance. By the time the main courses arrived, the atmosphere at table 4 was toxic. The seafood tower had gone mostly untouched. The Screaming Eagle Cabernet sat in Yamamoto's glass, drunk only in polite microscopic sips. Grant, however, was on his 3rd glass. The alcohol was making him louder, his cheeks flushed with a red hue that matched the rare steak in front of him. The proprietary software we're offering, Grant said, leaning over the table, his tie dangling dangerously close to the butter dish, is going to revolutionize your logistics. We're talking about cutting your overhead by 15%. Boom. Gone. Just like that. Yamamoto placed his chopsticks down. He aligned them perfectly parallel to the table edge. Efficiency is desirable, Yamamoto said softly. His English was good, but heavily accented, and he chose his words with agonizing care. But we worry about wa. Grant blinked. Wa? What is wa? Harmony. Kenji, the associate, translated quickly. The disruption to our current workforce. We have employees who have been with us for 40 years. A sudden shift in technology might... Oh, don't worry about the old guard, Grant interrupted, laughing. He actually slapped the table. That's the beauty of Viridian. It's intuitive. Even a dinosaur could learn it. And if they can't? Well, maybe it's time for them to retire, right? Out with the old, in with the new. That's how we stay apex predators. The silence that followed was absolute. It was a vacuum. Khloe, standing 5 feet away, refilling a water pitcher, felt the air leave the room. Grant had just called Yamamoto's loyal workforce, and by extension, Yamamoto himself, dinosaurs. He had dismissed the concept of loyalty, the very bedrock of Japanese corporate culture. Yamamoto looked at Grant. For the first time all night, there was an emotion on his face. It wasn't anger. It was pity. He turned to Kenji and spoke in rapid, quiet Japanese. Kare wa nani mo rikai shite nai. Jikan no muda da. Kairu. Khloe's breath hitched. She understood every word. He understands nothing. This is a waste of time. Let us leave. Grant, oblivious, grinned. What did he say? He likes the dinosaur analogy, right? Kenji looked uncomfortable. He adjusted his glasses. Mr. Yamamoto says he is tired from the journey. Perhaps we should conclude the dinner early. Early? Grant's smile faltered. But we haven't discussed the valuation. We haven't even got to dessert. I ordered the baked Alaska. It's on fire, literally. We must decline, Kenji said, his voice firming up. He began to gather the papers scattered on the table. Panic flared in Grant's eyes. He could feel the $50 million commission slipping through his fingers. He needed a Hail Mary. He needed to force a connection. Wait, Grant stammered. Look, I know you're hesitant, but I have the numbers. I have the projections. He frantically signaled for Khloe. Check. Get the check. And pack the dessert to go. Khloe moved in. This was the end. The deal was dead. Grant had insulted them, bored them, and now he was trying to trap them. As she reached for the plates, Grant turned to Yamamoto, desperate. Mr. Yamamoto, please, just give me 5 minutes to explain the legacy integration. I know you value legacy. My grandfather, he was in the war. He served in the Pacific. He always told me, Stop, Khloe mentally screamed. Do not bring up the war. He always told me that the Japanese were the fiercest fighters he ever saw. Total respect. That's why I want to work with you. Warrior to warrior." Grant leaned back, looking satisfied, thinking he had just paid a massive compliment. Yamamoto went rigid, his hands curled into fists on his lap. The vein in his temple throbbed. To Grant it was a compliment. To Yamamoto, whose family had likely lost everything in that era, it was a crude, insensitive reduction of tragedy into a sales pitch. Yamamoto stood up. He didn't wait for his associates. He didn't wait for the check. "I am leaving," Yamamoto said in English. His voice was no longer dry leaves. It was steel. "There is no deal." "What?" Grant stood up, knocking his chair back. It clattered loudly against the floor. "Mr. Yamamoto, wait! You can't just walk out. We have a verbal agreement." "We have nothing," Yamamoto said, turning his back. Grant's face went from red to purple. He lost it. The stress, the alcohol, the public humiliation. It snapped the leash. "Now hold on a minute." Grant stepped around the table, effectively blocking Yamamoto's path to the exit. "I rented this room. I bought this wine. You owe me the courtesy of hearing me out." It was a disaster. It was a physical confrontation in a Michelin star restaurant. The other diners were staring. The manager was rushing over from the front desk, and Khloe was standing right there, holding a tray of dirty plates, trapped in the crossfire. Yamamoto looked up at Grant, who was a foot taller than him. The CEO's eyes were filled with a cold, absolute dismissal. He prepared to step around Grant, to leave him there like a petulant child. But then, Grant did the unthinkable. He reached out and grabbed Yamamoto's shoulder. "I am talking to you," Grant shouted. The restaurant went silent. Yamamoto stopped. He looked at the hand on his expensive suit jacket. He looked at Grant. The insult was total. In that moment, not only was the deal dead, but Viridian Tech would be blacklisted from every major industry in Asia. Grant had just committed corporate suicide. Grant seemed to realize what he had done. He pulled his hand back as if burned. "I just meant..." Yamamoto straightened his jacket. He didn't say a word. He simply turned to Kenji and nodded toward the door. Grant stood there, hyperventilating, his eyes darting around the room, looking for something, anything to save him. His eyes landed on Khloe. "You!" he shrieked, pointing at her, needing a scapegoat, needing to vent the adrenaline. "You spilled the wine. I saw you. You bumped the table and distracted him. This is your fault." It was a lie, a blatant, desperate lie. Khloe hadn't moved. Sir, I didn't." "Shut up!" Grant roared. "You're fired. Get out of my sight. You incompetent." Yamamoto paused. He was 10 feet away, walking toward the exit. But at the sound of Grant berating the waitress, he stopped. He turned around slowly. He looked at Grant, bullying a young woman who had done nothing but serve him silently for 2 hours. The air was electric. Khloe stood there, the tray heavy in her hands, Grant's spit practically on her face. She looked at Yamamoto. Yamamoto looked at her, and in that split second, Khloe made a choice. She wasn't furniture anymore. She remembered the rules. "Don't speak." She took a breath. She looked past Grant's shoulder, locking eyes directly with Kaito Yamamoto, and she spoke. "Yamamoto-sama," she said, her voice clear, steady, and projecting perfect authority. But she didn't speak in English. "Okyaku-sama wa o motomeru kokoro o kono yu na burei na furumai de kegasareta koto o fukaku o wabi mushi agamasu." Honored guest, I deeply apologize that your heart, which seeks harmony, has been defiled by such rude behavior. Grant froze. His mouth hung open. Yamamoto's eyes widened. Khloe wasn't done. She switched dialects, from the standard Tokyo polite form to the softer, more poetic dialect of the Kyoto region, Yamamoto's home. Kono wain wa anata no yona rekishi aru okata ni wa amari ni mo sozo shitsugimashita. Tsugi wa shizukana ni wa no yona mono o go yoi sasete itadakimasen desho ka? This wine was far too noisy for a man of your history. Next time, might we prepare something that is more like a quiet garden? The silence that followed was different. It wasn't empty. It was heavy with shock. Grant stared at her. "What did you just say?" Khloe ignored him. She kept her eyes on Yamamoto. The old CEO slowly turned his body fully back toward her. The stone mask cracked. For the first time that night, a genuine small smile touched the corners of his lips. He took a step back toward the table. "You speak the dialect of my mother," Yamamoto said in English, his voice soft, ignoring Grant completely. "I study the old ways," Khloe replied in English, bowing her head slightly. Not a servant's bow, but a sign of mutual respect. "And I know that true power does not need to shout." Yamamoto chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. "True power does not need to shout, indeed." He looked at Grant, who was trembling, confused, and sweating profusely. Then he looked back at Khloe. "This man," Yamamoto pointed at Grant without looking at him. "Is he your master?" "He is a customer," Khloe said. "But tonight he has forgotten that he is a guest." Yamamoto nodded. He walked back to the table, but he didn't sit in his chair. He stood next to the booth. "I am hungry," Yamamoto said. "But I cannot eat with him." He gestured to Grant. "Get out," Yamamoto said. Grant blinked. "Excuse me?" "Get out," Yamamoto repeated, "or I call your CEO in California and tell him why I am buying my robotics from Germany." Grant looked at Khloe, then at Yamamoto. He was defeated, completely, utterly dismantled. He grabbed his jacket, his face a mask of horror, and scrambled toward the door without another word. Yamamoto looked at Khloe. He gestured to the empty seat across from him, Grant's seat. "Please," Yamamoto said. "Sit, correct the wine, and tell me, what else do you know about quiet gardens?" Khloe sat. The leather booth was still warm from Grant Sterling's body heat, a physical reminder of the man whose career had just imploded in this very seat. She placed her hands on the table, feeling the texture of the starch-white linen. Across from her, Kaito Yamamoto was no longer the inscrutable titan of industry. He was an old man watching her with the curiosity of a hawk observing a mouse that had decided to bite back. "The wine," Khloe said softly to the sommelier, who was hovering nearby, looking terrified. "Remove the screaming eagle. It is a violent wine. Bring the 2009 Chateau Margaux, and please decant it for 10 minutes, not 30. It needs to breathe, not gasp." Yamamoto raised an eyebrow. "Margaux, the velvet fist." "It has structure," Khloe replied, her voice trembling slightly but finding its rhythm. "But it yields. It does not force its flavor upon you. It invites you to find it." "Like a good partner," Yamamoto murmured. For the next 20 minutes, they did not speak of business. This was the test. In the high-context culture of Kyoto business elites, you do not sign contracts with strangers, you sign contracts with souls. You must know the person's harugi, their gut art, their unspoken intentions, before you discuss money. They ate in a companionable silence that would have driven Grant Sterling insane. Khloe ate small bites of the sea bass, conscious of her table manners, conscious that she was a waitress in a $50 polyester uniform, sitting across from a man worth billions. "You said you study the old ways," Yamamoto said, breaking the silence as he swirled the ruby liquid in his glass. "What does a doctoral student in New York know of the Kyoto Machiya?" "I know that your company, Yamamoto Heavy Industries, began as a textile weaver in 1890, Khloe said. She had done her homework. She always did. I know that your philosophy is monozukuri, the craftsmanship of making things. Grant, Mr. Sterling, he tried to sell you efficiency. He tried to sell you speed, but you don't care about speed. Yamamoto put his glass down. The air in the booth shifted. The playful curiosity was gone, replaced by a razor-sharp business focus. Go on. You care about legacy, Khloe continued, her confidence growing. You have employees who are third generation. You don't want software that replaces them. You want software that honors them. You want a tool that acts like a master craftsman's chisel, something that extends the hand, not cuts it off. Yamamoto leaned forward. Grant told me this software would cut my workforce by 15%. Grant was reading the wrong slide deck, Khloe said. I've heard him rehearse this pitch 4 times this week with different clients. The software, Viridian Nexus, has a modular setting called Artisan Mode. It allows manual override for senior machinists. It captures their keystrokes and learns from them, rather than forcing them to conform to an algorithm. Grant didn't mention it because it doesn't sound disruptive enough for Wall Street. But for you, it's exactly what you need to preserve your wa. Yamamoto stared at her. He looked at Kenji, his associate. Kenji looked stunned. Is this true? Yamamoto asked Kenji. Kenji typed furiously on his tablet, pulling up the technical schematics of the Viridian proposal that Grant had ignored. Yes, sir. There is an appendix here. Human-in-the-loop architecture. It is listed as a legacy feature. We missed it because Mr. Sterling focused entirely on the automation suite. Yamamoto looked back at Khloe. His eyes were wide. You are a waitress. How do you know the technical specifications of a back-end logistics API? Khloe smiled, a sad, tired smile. People think I'm furniture, Mr. Yamamoto. They think because I carry a tray, I don't have ears. I have served Grant Sterling 3 times this month. I have served the VP of Engineering from Oracle. I have served hedge fund managers from Bridgewater. I listen. I absorb. I have a memory palace in my head, and I fill it with everything I hear because one day I won't be carrying this tray. Yamamoto sat back. He picked up the Chateau Margaux and took a deep draught. He closed his eyes, savoring the wine and the revelation. The artisan mode, Yamamoto whispered. That changes the valuation. It changes the risk profile completely. He opened his eyes. You just saved this deal. You realize that? I didn't do it for the deal, Khloe said honestly. I did it because he was rude to the wine. Yamamoto threw his head back and laughed, a loud, barking laugh that startled the rest of the restaurant. But the laughter was cut short. The heavy oak doors of the obsidian room burst open. The silence of the dining room shattered as Grant Sterling stormed back in. And he wasn't alone. Grant Sterling looked like a man who had stared into the abyss and decided to jump in head first. His tie was loosened, his hair wild, and his face was slick with sweat. Flanking him were 2 large uniformed NYPD officers and the restaurant's general manager, a man named Jean-Luc, who protected his VIP clients with the ferocity of a Rottweiler. There she is, Grant screamed, pointing a shaking finger at Khloe. That's her! Arrest her! The restaurant went deadly silent. Forks hovered halfway to mouths. The atmosphere shifted from curiosity to scandal instantly. Jean-Luc marched over to the table, his face pale with rage. He ignored Yamamoto entirely. Khloe, Jean-Luc hissed. Get up. Now. What is the meaning of this? Yamamoto asked, his voice low and dangerous. Stay out of this, Kaito, Grant snapped, stepping forward. He looked deranged. This woman is a corporate spy. I just got off the phone with legal. She's been eavesdropping on confidential meetings for months. She stole my phone. She stole proprietary data. Khloe stood up, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. That is a lie. I have been sitting right here. I have the tracking data, Grant lied, waving his phone at the officers. My company tablet is missing. It has the schematics for the merger. She was the only one at the table. Search her. One of the officers, a tired-looking sergeant named Miller, stepped forward. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step away from the table. We've had a complaint of grand larceny and corporate espionage. This is insane, Khloe said, her voice rising. I'm a PhD student. I serve steaks. I didn't steal anything. Check her apron, Grant yelled. She probably has a recorder in there. Jean-Luc grabbed Khloe's arm. You are embarrassing this establishment. Come with us to the back office. Now. Unhand her. A voice cut through the noise. It wasn't Yamamoto. It was Kenji. The associate stood up, shedding his passive demeanor. He blocked Jean-Luc's path. She is a guest of Yamamoto Heavy Industries, Kenji announced. If you touch her, you are touching an extension of our corporation. She's an employee, Jean-Luc argued. She was an employee, Yamamoto said, remaining seated, swirling his wine. Now she is my consultant, and currently she is advising me on a $50 million acquisition. If you arrest her, you are interfering with international trade. Grant scoffed, a desperate, ugly sound. Consultant? She's a waitress. Look at her. She's wearing a polyester apron. Kaito, don't let her fool you. She's probably working for your competitors. Did she tell you she knew about the artisan mode? How would she know that? Because she stole the files. The officer looked between the screaming man in the $5,000 suit and the terrified waitress. The dynamic was clear. Rich man versus nobody. In New York, the rich man usually wins. Ma'am, Officer Miller said, reaching for his handcuffs. We can sort this out downtown. If you have the tablet, just give it up. I don't have it, Khloe cried. Search her, Grant demanded again. Yamamoto slammed his hand on the table. The silverware jumped. The sound was like a gunshot. Enough! Yamamoto roared. He stood up. He reached into his own suit jacket. Grant flinched, expecting a weapon. Instead, Yamamoto pulled out a slim, silver voice recorder. I record all my meetings, Yamamoto said, his voice projecting to the back of the room. It is policy. I have a recording of the last 3 hours. I have a recording of Mr. Sterling insulting my culture. I have a recording of him leaving the restaurant. And I have a recording of the last 20 minutes, where this young woman has been sitting with me, with her hands on the table, discussing philosophy. He held up the device. At no point did she touch your tablet. At no point did she leave the table. If you arrest her, Yamamoto turned his gaze to the police officer. I will release this audio to the New York Times tomorrow morning, and I will sue the NYPD for false arrest and this restaurant for harassment. Officer Miller paused. He looked at Grant. Sir, did you actually see her take the tablet? Well, it's gone, Grant stammered. Who else could it be? Check your briefcase, you idiot, Kenji said coldly. Grant froze. He looked down at the leather bag by his feet, the one he had kicked in his tantrum earlier. The flap was slightly open. The silver edge of an iPad was visible, tucked exactly where he had left it. The silence in the room was excruciating. Grant Sterling had just accused an innocent woman of a felony because his ego couldn't handle rejection. Officer Miller looked at the iPad in the bag. He looked at Grant. His expression hardened. Mr. Sterling, the officer said. It seems your property is right there. Grant went pale. It must have slid. You filed a false police report, the officer said. That's a crime, sir. Jean-Luc, the manager, realized the tide had turned. He released Khloe's arm immediately, brushing off his jacket as if he hadn't just been manhandling her. "A misunderstanding," Jean-Luc muttered. "Clearly just a misunderstanding." "It is not a misunderstanding," Yamamoto said. He walked around the table and stood next to Khloe. He placed a hand on her shoulder, a protective, fatherly gesture. "This is an insult," Yamamoto declared. "Grant Sterling, you are a disgrace to your profession. And you," he pointed at Jean-Luc, "you sided with a bully against your own staff. Shame on you." Yamamoto turned to Kenji. "Get Preston Vane on the video link. Now." Grant's knees actually buckled. "No, Kaito, please, don't call Preston. Anyone but Preston." Preston Vane was the CEO of Viridian Tech. He was known in Silicon Valley as the Butcher for how he handled incompetence. "Kenji," Yamamoto commanded, "do it." Kenji set up a secure video conference on his own tablet, propping it up against the crystal water pitcher. The screen flickered to life. A face appeared. Preston Vane was sitting in a sunlit office in Palo Alto, California. He looked sharp, intense, and immediately confused by the camera angle, which showed a weeping Grant Sterling, 2 police officers, and a Japanese billionaire standing next to a waitress. "Kaito?" Preston's voice tinny through the speakers. "What is going on? I thought the signing was at 8 p.m. Why is Grant crying?" "Preston," Yamamoto said calmly. "The deal is off." "What?" Preston leaned into the camera. "We have an agreement in principle. What happened?" "Your regional director," Yamamoto gestured to Grant, "is a liar, a racist, and a fool. He insulted my ancestors. He called my employees dinosaurs, and he just tried to have an innocent woman arrested to cover up his own incompetence." Preston Vane's face went deadly still. "Grant, is this true?" "Preston, listen. They're twisting my words," Grant pleaded, sweat dripping off his nose. "I was just using aggressive sales tactics. You told me to be aggressive. I told you to close the deal, not burn down the restaurant," Preston said icily. "Officer, is he being detained?" "He's about to be cited for filing a false report, sir," Officer Miller piped up, enjoying this immensely. "You're fired, Grant," Preston said. It was simple, clinical. "Leave the tablet. Get out. You'll hear from legal regarding your severance package, which will be 0. Grant Sterling opened his mouth, closed it, and then slumped. The fight left him. He looked like a deflated balloon. The officers escorted him out of the restaurant, the diners watching in rapt silence. On the screen, Preston Vane rubbed his temples. "Kaito, I apologize. I will fly to New York myself tomorrow. We can salvage this. The technology is sound. You know that." "The technology is sound," Yamamoto agreed, "but I do not trust your culture. You breed men like Grant, men who do not listen." "I can fix that," Preston urged. "Name your terms." "I have one condition," Yamamoto said. "I will sign the deal. Tonight. Right now." "But who will negotiate?" Preston asked. "I can't get a team there for 6 hours." "She will," Yamamoto said, placing his hand on Khloe's shoulder again. Preston squinted at the screen. "Who is she? Is she wearing an apron?" "This is Khloe," Yamamoto introduced her. "She is the only person in this room who understands both your technology and my culture. She knows about the artisan mode. She knows about the WA. She speaks the Kyoto dialect." Khloe stepped forward, looking into the tablet. This was it. The precipice. "Hi," she said, feeling ridiculous. "I'm the waitress." Preston Vane was silent for a long 5 seconds. He looked at Yamamoto, then at the waitress. He was a gambler at heart. He knew when he had no leverage. "Okay," Preston said. "If Kaito trusts you, I trust you. Khloe, do you know the valuation we were aiming for?" $50 million for a 51% stake, Khloe said instantly. But that was based on the efficiency model. Mr. Yamamoto wants the legacy preservation model. That requires more custom coding, higher maintenance costs. So the valuation drops, Preston said. $45 million. No, Khloe said. The word hung in the air. She surprised herself. She surprised Yamamoto. Excuse me, Preston said. The valuation goes up, Khloe said, her voice strengthening. You aren't selling him a generic tool anymore. You are selling him a bespoke solution that preserves his company's 100-year-old culture. That is a premium product. It's the difference between a suit off the rack and a bespoke suit from Savile Row. You charge more for bespoke. Yamamoto smiled. It was a wide, toothy grin. She is right, Yamamoto said. How much? Preston asked. $55 million, Khloe said. And you guarantee the employment of his current workforce for 5 years. No layoffs caused by the software. Preston laughed. You drive a hard bargain for someone wearing an apron. $52 million, and 3 years of guaranteed employment. Khloe looked at Yamamoto. He gave a barely perceptible nod. Deal, Khloe said. Deal, Preston Vane said. Get it in writing. Yamamoto grabbed a heavy linen napkin. He took a gold fountain pen from his pocket. In elegant, sweeping strokes, he wrote out the terms. Viridian Tech acquires 51% of YHI Logistics Division. Price, $52,000. Clause, artisan mode enabled. 3-year labor guarantee. He signed it. He held it up to the camera for Preston to see. Witnessed, Preston said. My lawyers will paper it in the morning. Kaito, thank you. And Khloe, call me on Monday. Viridian needs a new regional director in New York. I think you already passed the interview. The screen went black. The deal was done. Jean-Luc, the manager, was standing in the corner, looking like he wanted to vanish into the wallpaper. Khloe looked at him. Jean-Luc, she said. Yes, Khloe, he squeaked. I quit. She untied her apron, folded it neatly, and placed it on the table next to the $52 million napkin. The restaurant was quiet. The show was over. The police had left. Grant Sterling had been exiled to the cold Manhattan sidewalk, and the diners had returned to their whispers, though their eyes kept darting back to table 4. Khloe stood by the table, her apron folded like a flag of surrender, next to the linen napkin that was now worth $52 million. She felt lightheaded. The adrenaline that had sustained her through the confrontation was fading, replaced by a sudden, trembling exhaustion. She looked at her hands. They were the same hands that had scrubbed counters, polished silverware, and carried heavy trays for 5 years to pay for textbooks. But now they felt different. They had rewritten a contract. They had wielded power. Yamamoto picked up the napkin. He folded it with the reverence one might show a religious text and tucked it into his breast pocket. You have quit your job, Yamamoto noted, his face unreadable. I had to, Khloe replied, her voice steady. I can't serve people who think I'm invisible. Not anymore. Good, Yamamoto said. A tiger does not hunt mice. He stood up and signaled to Kenji. Kenji, settle the bill. Include a 100% tip for the support staff. They had to witness an ugliness tonight. Yes, Yamamoto-sama. Yamamoto turned to Khloe. Come, I will take you home. Oh no, that's okay. Khloe instinctively demurred. I take the subway. It's the F train. It's just 2 blocks. Mr. Sterling would have let you take the subway. Yamamoto interrupted gently. Mr. Sterling would have let you walk in the rain. I am not Mr. Sterling. My driver is outside. They walked out of the obsidian room together. As they passed the hostess stand, Jean-Luc, the manager, couldn't even look them in the eye. He pretended to be intensely interested in the reservation book. The power dynamic had shifted so violently that the very air in the restaurant felt different. Outside, the New York air was crisp. A sleek, black town car idled at the curb. The driver, a man with a thick neck and kind eyes, opened the door. As the car pulled away, merging into the river of taillights on Fifth Avenue, the silence inside the vehicle was comfortable. It was the silence of a quiet garden. "You took a great risk," Yamamoto said, looking out the window at the passing city. "If I had not been recording, if Preston had not answered the phone, you would be in a jail cell right now." "I calculated the odds," Khloe said. "Grant is a narcissist. Narcissists make mistakes when they are panicked. He was sloppy. I knew he didn't have the tablet because I saw him put it in his bag before the appetizers arrived. He was too busy looking at his reflection in the spoon to remember." Yamamoto chuckled. "You observe everything." "It's my job," Khloe said. She corrected herself. "It was my job." "Tell me," Yamamoto said, turning to face her. "Why did you study my dialect? Japanese is difficult. The Kyoto dialect is even harder. Why?" Khloe looked down at her hands. "My father. He was a mechanic. He worked for a factory in Ohio that was bought by a Japanese firm in the 90s. Everyone was scared. They thought they would lose their jobs. But the new owners, they kept everyone. They retrained them. They treated them with dignity. My dad learned a few phrases to say thank you. When he died, I wanted to understand the culture that gave him his pride back." Yamamoto listened in silence. He took a deep breath. "Honor," he said softly. "It is a currency that does not depreciate." The car pulled up to a modest apartment building in Queens. It was a far cry from the penthouses Grant Sterling likely frequented. "Khloe," Yamamoto said as the car stopped. "Monday morning, 9, Lancaster a.m. Be at the Viridian offices." "But I don't work for them," Khloe said. "Preston Vane is a shark," Yamamoto said. "He respects only blood in the water. Today you showed him blood. He will offer you a job. But do not take his first offer." Yamamoto reached into his pocket and pulled out a plain business card. It had no logo, just a name and a private number. "If he does not give you the title of vice president," Yamamoto said, "call me. I will hire you myself, and I will pay you double." Khloe took the card. She felt tears pricking her eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming feeling of being seen. "Thank you, Yamamoto-sama," she whispered. "No," he corrected her. "Thank you. Khloe-san." Monday morning at Viridian Tech's New York headquarters was usually a chaotic affair, but today the office was gripped by a strange, terrified stillness. Word had spread. The rumor mill was on fire. "Did you hear about Grant? Did you hear about the waitress? Did you hear about the napkin?" Grant Sterling's office, usually the center of loud conference calls and aggressive sales bell ringing, was empty. A security guard was seen earlier carrying out a box containing Grant's Salesman of the Year trophies. Khloe walked into the lobby at 8:55 a.m. She wasn't wearing an apron. She was wearing her best suit, a charcoal blazer she had bought for interviews she never got. She carried a leather portfolio. "Can I help you?" the receptionist asked, looking skeptical. "I'm here to see Preston Vane," Khloe said. "Mr. Vane is in California. He joins via video link. Do you have an appointment?" "Tell him it's Khloe," she said. "The one with the napkin." The receptionist's eyes went wide. Oh, right this way." She was led not to a cubicle, but to the boardroom. The massive screen at the end of the table was already active. Preston Vane was there, larger than life. "Khloe!" Preston beamed. It was the smile of a predator looking at a prize racehorse. Come in, have a seat. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water? We have a sparkling water tap." "I'm fine, Preston," Khloe said, sitting at the head of the table. She didn't call him Mr. Vane. She established the peer level immediately. "Look, let's cut to the chase," Preston said, leaning back in his chair. "You saved my hide on Friday. Kaito Yamamoto is not an easy man to please, and you had him eating out of your hand. I did some digging. You're a PhD candidate at Columbia. Linguistic anthropology, top of your class." "I am," Khloe confirmed. "Smart. Very smart. We need that kind of brain here. I want to bring you on. Director of Client Relations for the Asia-Pacific region. Salary is $150,000. Stock options. Full benefits. It's a huge step up from... well, you know." He meant waitressing. Khloe paused. It was a life-changing amount of money. It would pay off her loans in a year. It was safety. It was success. But she remembered Yamamoto's voice. A tiger does not hunt mice. "No," Khloe said. Preston blinked. "Excuse me? That's a standard starting package for a director." "I don't want to be Director of Client Relations," Khloe said calmly. "That's a glorified hostess role. You want me to smooth over ruffled feathers. I don't want to smooth feathers, Preston. I want to build the bird." "Okay," Preston said slowly. "What do you want?" "Vice President of Strategic Integration," Khloe said. "I don't just want to talk to the clients. I want to oversee how our product actually fits their culture. I want to stop the next Grant Sterling from happening before he walks into the room. I want veto power on sales pitches that violate cultural protocols." Preston laughed. "Khloe, that's a C-suite level ask. You have zero corporate experience." "I have the Yamamoto account," Khloe reminded him. "The contract is conditional, Preston. Did you read the fine print on the napkin?" Preston frowned. "The lawyers are still typing it up. Clause 4, Khloe lied. Or perhaps, she manifested, the integration is contingent on a cultural liaison approved by Yamamoto Heavy Industries. That's me. If I don't sign off on the integration plan, the deal voids." She didn't know if that was legally true, but she knew Yamamoto would back her up. Preston stared at her. He calculated. He realized that without this woman, his $52 million win would evaporate. "Vice President," Preston sighed. "Salary $220,000, but you report directly to me. And if you lose Yamamoto, you're out." "Deal," Khloe said. "And one more thing." "What?" "I want Grant Sterling's office. I like the view." Preston grinned. He actually looked impressed. "It's yours. Welcome to Viridian, Khloe." 5 years later, New York City. The Obsidian Room is still there, still dimly lit, still serving expensive steaks. But the staff is different. They walk with their heads high. The management treats them with respect. Why? Because everyone knows the legend. They tell the new hires the story on their first night. The story of the waitress who took down a titan. They point to Table 4, which is now affectionately called the Khloe booth. And as for the players in our drama? Grant Sterling never recovered his status. Blacklisted from major tech firms due to the Yamamoto incident, he moved to Florida. Last anyone heard, he was selling timeshares near Orlando. He still wears expensive suits, but they are fraying at the cuffs. He still talks loudly in meetings, but nobody listens. Kaito Yamamoto retired 2 years ago. He passed the CEO role to Kenji, but he kept his promise. The artisan mode integration was a massive success. Yamamoto Heavy Industries became the model for ethical automation. Kaito spends his days in his garden in Kyoto. Every Christmas, he receives a bottle of 2009 Chateau Margaux from a friend in New York. And Khloe, Dr. Khloe Vance, she finished her PhD at night, is now the Chief Operating Officer of Viridian Tech. She didn't just stop at VP. She revolutionized the company's approach to global business. She implemented a mandatory listening training for all sales executives. She is known as the toughest negotiator in the industry. She is fair, but she is absolute. One rainy Tuesday, she found herself back at the Obsidian Room for a meeting with a new client. The waiter, a nervous young man named Leo, approached the table. He was trembling, terrified of spilling the water. Khloe stopped the conversation. She looked up at Leo. "Take a breath, Leo," she said gently. "You're doing fine." "I'm sorry, Mom," Leo stammered. "I'm just nervous. This is a big table." Khloe smiled. She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card, her own card. "You are not furniture, Leo," she said. "You are the most important person in this room, because without you, we don't eat. Remember that." She looked at her client, a CEO from London, who looked impatient. "We can wait," Khloe told the CEO. "Leo needs a moment." The CEO shut his mouth, because when Khloe Vance spoke, you listened. She wasn't the invisible waitress anymore. She was the one who controlled the silence, and that is the incredible true-to-life story of how a single moment of courage changed everything. Khloe proved that power isn't about who shouts the loudest, who wears the most expensive suit, or who sits at the head of the table. True power is observation. It is empathy. And sometimes it's knowing exactly when to break the rules. Grant Sterling thought he was the king of the jungle, but he forgot the most important rule of nature. Never underestimate the quiet ones. He saw a waitress. Yamamoto saw a master. In business and in life, people will try to make you feel small. They will tell you to stay in your lane, to be invisible, to be furniture. Don't let them. Listen, learn, and when the moment is right, speak up. You never know when a napkin might turn into a $50 million empire. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, with a side of red wine, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow and lets us know you want more stories like this. What would you have done in Khloe's shoes? Would you have stayed silent, or would you have risked it all? Let me know in the comments down below. I read every single one. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. We upload new dramas every week. Remember, stay sharp, stay humble, and never let anyone tell you you're just furniture. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.